Hi, everybody. This is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. It's Saturday, May 25th, and I'm hanging out at the NORWAC Astrology Conference in Seattle right now. I've been here since Thursday night, and I gave a talk yesterday on the intersection between Eastern and Western philosophy in the history of astrology. And then today I gave a talk on the essential dignities. Right now, I'm feeling not totally great about both talks. I think they went pretty well, but they both uh, were talks that probably should have been given in like 2 to 2.5 hours. And I thought, I'll get it done in an hour and 15 or an hour and a half for each session, and that was a little too ambitious. So I'm feeling, like I wished I would have trimmed the talks down a little differently, but you live and learn. I think people still got some good stuff from the talks. I'm hopeful about that anyway. Um, and I've had a bunch of people sign up for my class. The early bird, the class, for those of you who don't know, I teach a 1-year course in ancient astrology for modern times. That course is starting on June 9th. It meets 30 times over the course of the year. There's 12 guest speakers that are a part of it. It meets through webinars online, but you can participate. You can participate live or remotely. Certification based. You take a test at the end if you want to be certified. It's a great program. It's like I said, it starts on June 9th, so it's coming up. The early bird rate for the program, if you pay in full, is $12.99, and it's in effect all the way up until the 31st. The normal tuition cost is $1,800 with a 12-month payment plan. It's a really deep, immersive training program for people who are interested in going deeper with astrology. And the first 2/3 of the program feature a lot of deep theoretical work. If you were at the conference this weekend and you liked what I did and you were interested in it, this course is, you're really going to like it probably. And then the last third of the course, last 10 lessons or so, are all live clients that we bring into the classroom where I demonstrate the techniques that we've been studying by reading for people. And you get to see it in action. And then after the client leaves the classroom, we sit and break down the reading further as a class. So it's a great program. You still have about 6 days left to use the early bird rate. So hopefully some of you will be able to take advantage of that. And what I'm doing today in this talk is I'm giving another chart demonstration. A lot of people who are interested in taking my program want to see me in action before they take the program. So I've been doing a series of birth chart demonstrations in order to give people more insight into the way I read and some of the techniques and how they're applied. So you're actually getting a little sneak preview of what you would see the last part of the program, where you see me implement Hellenistic astrology techniques alongside of some modern techniques for live clients. So at any rate, that being said, you could also enjoy this just as a student of astrology. Seeing chart demonstrations done is always interesting. So all right, let's go ahead and put the chart up on the screen. Our chart today is coming from, we're going to say, client T. So client T was kind enough to volunteer her chart for us. And basic question that she had is, what's going on in her life right now? Financially, she is really hurting. And she is hurting financially on the heels of a painful divorce. So where do we see that? And let's start by using traditional techniques and then compare and contrast them to a few modern techniques. So first of all, in a chart like this, you see it up on the screen, the first thing that you would do when someone says that they're having marital difficulties or that they're going through a divorce and it's really difficult is to check a few of the usual suspects. So the usual suspects would be either a planetary significator of marriage, like the moon or Venus, which can both signify marriage in traditional astrology, or the seventh house, which is the place of marriage. And that would pertain to planets in the seventh place, or the ruler of the seventh place, or even the exaltation ruler of the seventh place. I talked about exaltation rulers in a talk that I gave today, and I'll be doing a longer version of that talk coming up. By the way, for people who are interested in the talks I just gave at this astrology conference, I'll be posting longer YouTube versions of both talks in the upcoming weeks to my YouTube channel. So hopefully you'll enjoy seeing them. But at any rate, back to this chart. You look at the 7th place as the place of marriage. It's just to get a feeling for, okay, this person has said that there's some challenges around marriage. They're going through a divorce. What do we see? Well, first of all, one of the simplest things that we can do is just take note of the fact that right now in this individual's life, all the way up and through next winter, there are eclipses landing in the 1st and the 7th place. What does that mean? Well, eclipses are one of the best prognosticative tools of traditional astrology. We use them more than we use things like, say, Pluto or Uranus or Neptune in modern astrology. Those planets are sort of the agents of deep, long, process-oriented transformation in modern astrology. Sequences of eclipses back to back to back to back in whole sign houses in ancient astrology is sort of the equivalent. So we have eclipses happening across the 1st and 7th house axis. The eclipses in the 1st and 7th house will always bring up issues relative to birth. The 1st house is a place where planets rise and appear in the east. So they signal things that are coming into either physical manifestation or things that are being launched or things that are starting. The 7th place, which is a place of conclusion, it's a place of finishing, because in the west, the 7th house planets set, they disappear. So conclusion, finality, resolution. However, the 1st house also corresponds to birth and the appearance of the actual individual whose chart we're looking at. So the 1st house has to do with the physical constitution and health of the individual. The 7th house has to do with anything other that we join ourselves to, yoke ourselves to, or merge into somehow, whether it's the gods or a lover. The 7th house contains those different elements. And so anytime you have transits to the 7th place, you're also going to have those kinds of topics activated. Now, there's a built-in polarity between these houses. We talk about this in modern astrology too. Appearance and disappearance, beginnings and endings, self, vitality, physical constitution, health, psychology, behavior, things in the 1st house. 7th house, the other, and marriage or relationship in some general sense. So when eclipses, sequences of eclipses are happening in these houses, there is a fated karmic season of transformation or change that's happening. Eclipses are rooted in the symbolism of the moon and the lunar nodes of the moon. The moon in general pertains to the realm of fortune, and the realm of fortune is generally related to events that we're harvesting in our lives that don't necessarily feel like we're completely in control of them. Partially our choices, but also a mishmash of circumstantial things that just happen and create kind of the perfect storm. So eclipses signal those transformational seasons. They're each about a year to year and a half long at their peak. So our client T is in the midst of these powerful transformations, and especially when they're landing in the 7th place, we see her going through a divorce. That's not to say that you would sit down and predict that with every single person that you talk to, but it does mean that you would, the 7th place would be a place where you would talk about potential for a heavy developmental, transformational time period focused on relationships. It's other things that we take into consideration alongside of that that tell us, will this be easy, or will it be rather difficult? How do we know exactly? Well, first of all, you have to study the natal karma. You have to have a sense for, you have to have some sense of what the chart says about the topic that you're examining. So there's a number of different ways of doing that. One of the simplest ways of doing that is to look at the planet that rules the place. Any planets that are in the place as well, but ultimately the ruler is very important, as is the exaltation ruler. So at any rate, let's just stick for now, just simple, keeping it simple. We'll just look at the domicile ruler, which is Saturn. Now, Saturn is in the 11th house in the sign of Taurus. The 11th house was traditionally a place that was called the house of good spirit and the joy of Jupiter. It's a house that's connected to allies, benefactors, friends, groups of people that support your dreams and ambitions in life. And so when we see the ruler of the seventh in the 11th, one very standard and simple interpretation is that this whoever you marry is likely to be an asset or an ally. They will give you some kind of mobility or some kind of traditional Saturn support. Now, what kind of support could this be related to? Well, Saturn and Venus's sign would probably be a Saturn-Venus combination: stability and wealth, stability and beauty, tradition, age, maturity, and some degree of, opulence, beauty, artistic qualities, something like that. So probably this person would have married someone or been with someone, for example, who would provide some of those things. It is also demonstrated for us through the sun's position in the 8th house, which is a universal significator in the chart, meaning it has a lot of power in the life of the individual. The sun in the 8th house is in the house of partner or spouse's wealth or income. And it is also in the domicile of Saturn, and it's in its stability, and the sun rules our client's financial house. Eclipses were naturally happening in these two houses when the individual was born, with the sun in its detriment in the spouse's income house as the ruler of her own financial house. When considering that, in addition to the fact that the sun is in a whole sign square with Saturn, and that Saturn has power over the sun in the house of allies, we would say you'll probably marry an ally, especially financially. Their wealth or their position will give you a certain amount of help or support. However, this is a nighttime chart. Saturn is the malefic, contrary to the sect in favor. These are all traditional techniques. And the sun, like we said, the sun is debilitated, right? So what happens in this chart is that one is likely to become dependent to a certain degree on their income, may become dependent in some way upon the situation of the spouse. Or it may be closely, their own financial hardships may be closely linked to hardships or struggles with a spouse or in a relationship, which is exactly what you see in this case. The individual is going through a divorce that's adversely affecting their financial status. So these are, and how is that being brought about? That's the natal karma, which is now being switched on because you have eclipses in the 7th place, which is ruled by Saturn. So it feeds into the matrix of that karma in the chart. Now, the other thing that's very important when you look at this is right now, where is Saturn? Well, Saturn is also transiting through the 7th place. I've not used any outer planets so far. I'm using whole sign houses and all just traditional methods. Saturn, sort of lord of karma, so to speak, is traveling through the 7th place. And as it does so, it is also activating or stimulating that house. Okay, so those are two different methods, eclipses and Saturn, that are showing me the area of concern that this client has. The natural question that this client has, of course, is will things get better? When will they get better? So to do that, what we want to see happen is we want to see the eclipses start to move out of this area, right? And that doesn't mean, like, life goes on. There'll be new dramas and new areas. We all have to be, the major point of astrology is not to get so worried about these things. By studying all of this stuff, we're really trying to come to a place of equanimity and acceptance. So at any rate, we try to promote that with our clients. When we speak to our clients, when we talk to client T here, we're saying, hey, client T, like, this season will be over. Don't think everything's going to be perfect ever, but this season of your life will move on. And that'll most likely happen after next winter's eclipses. So you have a little less than a year to really see the continued fallout and transformation taking place, which may have to do with having your resources stripped from you on some level as the relationship is falling apart. So That's part of the reality of the chart. Good potential to marry someone with wealth or status or success that makes your own life, it's helped in some way as an ally, could result in losses when that support is taken away. Remember, leading up to this divorce, the past year and a half or so, she's also had eclipses in her second and eighth house affecting finances quite strongly. So, and affecting, of course, the relationship in turn. So, what is this person, just for fun? What does this person do, for a living? Well, we have a variety of different things we could look at. You could look at the midheaven, 10th place, and its ruler, which is Mars in the fifth house. So maybe does something that's Mars-like and fifth house-like. That's a possibility. But I never look at just one factor. That what you do for a living is a tricky thing to discern in ancient astrology. It's never as simple as just looking at the 10th house. In this person's chart, I am much more inclined to the stellium in the sixth house. Why? Because it all bears a trine to the midheaven, which is very important, whereas Mars does not. Mars does not have an aspect with the midheaven, though it is like and girded by being in its own, another one of its own signs, Scorpio. But aside from that, all of these planets do have reception or aspectual connection to the midheaven. Jupiter, Moon, Venus in the sixth house. Some of the things that would come to my mind for that would be a caring profession, a nurturing or healing profession of some kind, maybe even like a travel nurse or someone who travels abroad, like that, because Jupiter here is the ruler of the ninth place of long journeys and foreign countries. So it's possible that this person, like travel nursing, my sister does, is an occupational therapist who travels, has some similar signatures in her chart. I wouldn't be surprised if this person was in a caring or a health related field, or traveled a lot doing some kind of nurturing or caring work, even if it was customer relations or building some kind of networking relationships with other people, and was on the go quite a bit. So, and it is a Jupiter return year for this individual. So one would hope that Jupiter might, bring some grace and maybe some hidden benefits before the year is done. I would think of that as a strong possibility, as Jupiter is retrograding back toward Venus right now currently, which may may grant some unexpected blessings that come at just the right time between now and November. So that's just a brief idea. But beyond that, once the eclipses are done, after next January, we should see some movement out of this more turbulent period. So now, if we use modern techniques, remember my class is called Ancient Astrology for Modern Times. So I'm trying to teach people how to use basics, how to do things that are very basic that can make your practice and your interpretive abilities stronger, clearer, more organized, and efficient. But as you go along, I also want people to be able to see, and here's how you could use modern techniques and find the same things. A lot of the time we think more stuff, more techniques, more planets, more aspects means more accurate astrology. It's not true at all. And a lot of people really suffer in trying to learn astrology because they can't handle too many factors, too many components at once. So this class is really meant to help you strengthen your basics and then learn how to cultivate more nuanced and simple use of more newer, more modern concepts and techniques. So, for example, through the modern lens, what are the planets telling us right now? Well, how about Uranus has just moved into the 11th house of allies, right? Similar vibe that we were talking about with Saturn earlier. It's disrupting where your support comes from. When you have Uranus enter your 11th house, your allies are going to change. Who and what you consider a resource in your life is going to change. Group involvement, especially your visions for the future and what kind of groups of people support that vision, or what kinds of social dynamics are you are participating in because of your ambitions, goals, and ideals. Those will change dramatically, unexpectedly, be disrupted. There might be a theme of rebellion or defiance. Well, here we see Uranus having just entered Taurus in her 11th house and making a square to the sun in Aquarius. So that's very powerful, first of all. and it points to the same thing, a disruption around life path in general, sun, but specifically related to spouse or spouse's income or assets, and disruptions to her own finances, as the sun is also the ruler of her second house, which is her financial house. So that's the first piece. The second piece is also, right now, Neptune is moving through a square to Venus. Now, this actually in the ninth house could be interesting around her spirituality, religious or spiritual, academic, even traveling, maybe some other exotic topics that you could include here. But Neptune square Venus at the very least is part of the dissolution of a loving relationship, and Neptune Venus dynamics are sometimes like that. Disillusionment in love, dissolving of certain kinds of relationships, friendships, or bonds. So Neptune square to Venus also gives us a clue that that's happening right now. So those are two modern techniques you could throw in to see similar dynamics happening in the chart at the exact same time. So client T, what can we tell you? Will things look up? Will you be okay? Yes, I think you're going to be fine. The Uranian moment, if you think about it from a modern standpoint, has the power to liberate you into a new paradigm. Sometimes the old structure has to break apart, and for you that might include some degree of support, assistance, or it may involve troubles with your finances. We can see that in your birth chart. However, you could say it's here to liberate you. What's the opportunity behind this? How can you redefine yourself in an exciting new way, professionally or personally? The other question is, in a Jupiter return year, what hidden benefits are going to come out of this? Maybe especially related to your career. Please let us know what you do, or let me know at least what you do for a living, because I would love to know that. But also, the Jupiter year can bring unexpected blessings and be a cushion or a pad. So know that you do have an ally working at the same time right now, and Jupiter's not at all done. All the way until November, Jupiter return is going to be pretty strong. I would be very careful from November of 2019 all the way to November of 2020. Jupiter will enter its fall in your seventh house. That may indicate things continuing to go on somewhat difficultly in the area of your divorce. It could, however, also signify the potential to be enticed or tempted by another relationship, maybe with a strong provider of some kind. But I would be very cautious in general at this point in your life of getting into any other relationship with someone who has some kind of strong provider role to play financially, who may make you feel a little bit safer, but could also lead you to feeling trapped or controlled, or there could be something about that person or the relationship itself that's unhealthy. I would really take this as an opportunity to reflect upon what was toxic about this relationship. I'm preaching to the choir. I'm sure you probably are already doing this, right? But what was unhealthy about it, and how can you take that lesson and move forward and not repeat some of the same mistakes in selecting a partner ahead? Because I think probably within the next year, two at most, there will probably be opportunities for new relationships coming as well, with Jupiter, a planet that grants and blesses things, entering your seventh house. However, again, it's in its fall in Saturn's sign and will be interacting with that matrix of where do I get support, and is it a healthy kind of support or not? So at any rate, those are, and again, with the eclipses happening in your first house in Cancer in the year ahead, the question is also about you. What do you need to be your best self? What kind of setup, what kind of new life, what kind of new beginning, what kind of healing or personal focus can you add to your life right now that will enhance and take you forward and really help you sort of help you make this moment into a metamorphosis rather than just a moment of surviving a difficult situation. In order to do that, I think sometimes we have to dig down deep and realize that what's happening is an opportunity. It's not just something that's happening to us. When will it get better? When will I get through it? It's also to ask the question, why is this here? And how can I participate, take the message, and implement a new chapter in my life that's in accord with where the divine is leading me right now? So hopefully that helps. Client T, thank you for sharing. I hope this was interesting to you and to everyone who's listening. You get a taste now for how I read charts a little bit more, and if you come into my program, the kinds of things you'll be learning. This is like a speed reading in a sense, so things are really slowed down in the course. You have a whole year to work through a huge amount of really beautiful, interesting material and conversations about charts and live people coming to visit with us and stuff like that. So I hope to work with some of you soon. Remember, the early bird rate is in effect until the 31st. You have 6 more days to save on that. I also have need-based tuition for people who are, single parents, or, students, or retired, or just on disability, or if you're experiencing real financial hardship, feel free to reach out, and we can always work with you on need-based tuition as well. For all of that information, you can go to nightlightastrology.com and check out the certification course tab. So thanks everyone for listening, and I'm going to, here at NORWAC now, I'm going to go down and mingle some more with my astrology brothers and sisters. All right, take care everybody. Bye.